Good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for October 8th to order. Good evening, Council. We are working from an amended agenda this evening, and just for Council's information, under the additional item between 12 and 13, which is, it says, states request from the Main Street Cultural District. That really should be Ames Main Street. So that's just a Scribner error. And then also we brought to my attention that under item 18, unit 7, turbine generator parts, item A, it says Argo Turbo Service. It should actually read Argo Turbo Serve. So we take action on the consent, make those changes. Does council wish to pull any items?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 2.
Okay, number
I'd
2.
like to pull item 24.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve consent less item 2 and 24.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 David?
Thank you. Item 2 is minutes from a previous meeting, and this has to do with a correction that we were requested to make. And I reviewed the transcript, and it seems to me that the request is appropriate. I'd just like to pause and say that we have a lot of meetings here, and we have the clerk staff take the minutes for the meetings, and they're complicated things to do. They do a fantastic job. We go on for hours sometimes, as I'm afraid some of you know. And so I just first want to thank them, because we don't thank them often enough for how well this gets done. And part of what they do is that they try to take complicated things that we say and resolve them into summaries. And so this has to do with one of those summaries that I think just a slight change would set it right. So I'm talking about the September 24th council minutes. On page 6, I would move to take the phrase, quote, from the proposed new convention center with an attached hotel that the ACVB is pursuing, unquote. Take that phrase and simply strike it from the minutes, because I think in so doing, that would more faithfully represent what the speaker, Mr. Merlin Fonkook, actually said during the meeting.
Second.
Okay.
This is sort of an awkward thing. I have to go back and review this to be able to respond to this. Has staff looked at this? I mean, this is sort of catching us a bit cold.
We actually got some emails this afternoon.
I've been in.
It is true that it's all happened within the last few hours. So
True.
Mm-hmm.
So, John, has the staff had a chance to look at this? And does the staff feel like this is an appropriate correction?
yes, Diane, the city clerk did send through some emails that would support the motion.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, Gloria, item 24.
I just had a couple of questions about 24 from Kelly.
Yes.
So Kelly, this is the boundary line adjustment. First of all, can you give me some background on how many of these sorts of situations we encounter where you've got old property lines that somehow ended up in the middle of a building?
I would say that's pretty unique. That's why main reason why we wanted to correct this. Looking at the building permit history from the 70s, it's not really clear why building at that time said it's fine to straddle a property line, other than the 2 areas of land were owned by the same entity at that time. It's not something we would do today. So we didn't do site plans in the 70s. It was just a building permit. So there's not a lot of information about why it was permitted that way. The history of the property is it is a conveyance parcel. It was platted as a lot very long time ago, and then kind of parceled off through meets and bounds descriptions over time to get into this generally into this configuration that it is today.
And I assume, because we're seeing this, that there is no other way to accomplish the rebuilding of the parking lot without doing this.
It's technically not necessary to rebuild the parking lot. The code requires you can't issue a building permit if the parcel is a conveyance parcel. And a parking lot doesn't need a building permit. So technically they could rebuild. We asked as part of the DRC review process to rectify the situation, just to remove the lot line. It didn't seem to be necessary, and they concurred with doing that. And it also helped, they needed to do a survey to kind of get specifics on the parking lot dimensions to help us with that project at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, entertain a motion on resolution.
I'd move approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll now go into public forum and open public forum, and I have one card from Merlin.
Good evening. I'm Merlin Foncook, 1424 Kellogg Avenue. I want to assure you that what I say tonight doesn't come easy. I've given it more thought than I ever thought I would. I've been following city government for 25 years, and I've been here to complain about the process quite a few times. Nothing much ever seems to happen. So I want to talk about the corruption of process in Ames. I don't understand why the proponents of growth and development in the traditional sense in Ames seem to receive better treatment before the council than the citizens who question what we're doing. And I want to cite two examples. I want to cite the example of approving the infrastructure for the East Industrial area, how that got added to the budget at the last minute. Councilman Garden made the motion and later in public said that wasn't handled very well. Well, it sure wasn't. The city manager had asked the previous fall for input. Well, there was no input until then. By then it was too late for the citizenry to even question what was going on. 4 years later, we still haven't done a dang thing out there. I understand it's been a complicated process, but what goes? It seems to me that if anybody was really interested in building out there, they would have perhaps announced it to give that project a sense of urgency. And the second thing is I don't understand why we have such hands-off gloves to the Ames Convention and Visitors Bureau. 5 years ago, the public told them that their idea of a convention center, if it was going to be paid for by 19 million in bonds, was a bad idea. I guess they're not considered a public body, but yet they operate largely on the 1.75 million they get from the hotel motels annually. And now, apparently, they've been back scheming to build a convention center and hotel. This is a bad idea. Why doesn't anybody in authority in Ames tell them it's a bad idea? I don't understand this. We've allowed them to waste how many dollars planning on this? Now we have a $300 feasibility study. We don't know who's paying what. At least I haven't seen it. And it's simply a bad idea. Maybe we need a new convention center because she may be worn out, but we're not ever going to be a major convention center. The airport is 30 miles away. Why is anybody that's going to have an appreciable percentage of the people attending a conference here, why are they going to have it here? Why would they put the onus on the attendees to get from the airport to here? The studies 5 years ago, before that vote, showed that the overnight visitors in Ames conferences was an insignificant part of that group. That is not going to change. We need to have fewer dreamers and more realists. Thank you.
Merlin, I'd like to address your last point because it's not correct. I'm on that committee the ACVB is not pursuing after that flat space and hotel. It actually is part and parcel of a study that is being undertaken by the athletics department in concert with the university. And if something goes forward, it will not be through public dollars. It's going to be through a developer. So I just want to clarify the point. that
Well,
they're not.
I'll believe it when I see it, Mr.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Okay, well, the other thing is, the $300,000 for the study is being paid for by the athletics department.
Well,
They
that
are
would
paying
have
for it.
been nice to have them say that then when they announced it, because in the publicity related to the announcement, it said it would be split with an unknown amount paid by each. I forgot one thing,
Okay.
if you'll allow me.
Okay, well, I just want to.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not.
I'm not on that committee, so I can't be expected to know the fine details. All I can get is what I get from the media.
Okay.
Also, the agreement for the ACVB says they shall provide an annual report to the city. I'm told they've never done that. So therefore, that agreement is not valid. Write a new agreement and get some people on there that can tell them that want to look at things more honestly. The way it's set up, it's going to produce, it's trickle down to the hospitality industry. Of course they're going to be for things. And I cannot believe that the citizens of Ames won't be asked for money for that hotel convention center.
Okay.
I don't care what they've said so far. I'll have to see it to believe it. Because every convention center combined with a hotel that I'm aware of has used significant public dollars.
Mr. Mayor, could I just correct you on
Yes.
this? The ACVB did vote to cost share for $25,000 for the feasibility study. So that's,
Okay, thank you. I was not aware of that. Anybody else? Public forum. All right, close public forum. Move on to item 26. I'm sorry, item 25. Motion directing city attorney to prepare ordinance updating name and speed limit of University Boulevard, 530th Avenue. And John?
This item has two purposes. One is to lower the speed limit through the new roundabout areas. There's 3 new roundabouts from the most recent addition to Research Park up through Airport Road. Those were designed for 35 miles an hour, so that's what this action will be, to lower the speed limit in that section. Also associated with the Bergeson annexation, the portion of University Avenue that was in the county is now within the city. So there's 5 properties that will have their address changed to University Boulevard.
Okay. Any questions for staff? All right, I'll open up public input. Does anybody in the audience like to address council on this particular topic? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Entertain a motion on this item.
do we need to do that in 2 motions or just one for both?
Mark, is just one adequate for both?
Just one?
Yep.
Okay, I would move alternative 1A and B.
Second.
Okay, move a second, discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, item 26, presentation of 2019 resident satisfaction survey results. Susan?
Good evening. It's good to be back here again with the results of the 2019 Resident Satisfaction Survey. This is the 37th year of the Ames Resident Satisfaction Survey. That's a long time for any city to consistently do a survey of its citizens and to do it every single year. Once again, we partnered with the Institute for Design Research and Outreach with Iowa State University through the College of Design. The survey is sent both to utility bill users within the city and to students. And we continue to send surveys to students electronically until we get enough responses to meet our required number. We actually went well over what we needed this year. We had 606 return surveys, about half and half split between students and non-students. And again, we have a 95% confidence level with this survey and a plus or minus margin of error of 3.43%. And again, that means that we are 95% confident that if we surveyed every single person within our population, that 95 out of 100 times we would be correct. So let's get into the numbers. For ongoing service priorities, and I do have page numbers on this if you wanted to look along. The survey again is 122 pages. One of the reasons that it has grown so long is that over the years, council members have requested places where people could write in comments to sort of explain their answers. And over the years, also Iowa State has tried to be creative in the way that they display those comments. So you'll see them kind of parsed by subject, interspersed throughout the report, and then again aggregated at the very end at the appendix. So there's a lot of repetition of those comments, but they're all in there. So in regards to ongoing service priorities, the important thing to look at with this chart is what I would say would be the column called same. It's asked, residents are asked to suggest that the city should spend more money, less money, or the same amount of money in these various service areas. And once again, same is really the winner in this one. We're 10 out of 10 categories. People are responding from 58 to 87% of respondents are saying, we like what you're spending, keep it the same. They're basically ranked on a 1, 2, 3 scale. So the higher you get up the scale, the more support that subject area has. And in this particular survey, Ames Animal Shelter did get the highest ranking at 2.2, but I'm telling you, most of the other ones came in at 2.1, so it really wasn't a substantial difference. This is an interesting graph to look at throughout the years. This is the trends in preferred property tax adjustment. This survey, or this graph to me was kind of how the survey felt in a nutshell. There was a lot of gathering towards the middle, and the very top of this bar graph is 2019. 51% of respondents believed that property tax needed to stay the same. 21% suggested that they were okay with an increase, and 28% said they would prefer a decrease. Where you saw the shift from 2018 was from the middle to the decrease. And if you look at that over time, you still see a pretty strong concentration of people who like things no change. So, and I don't think that's that surprising. So, again, 51% of respondents in the no change category, which was a change from 2018. Okay, on page 8, we have the capital improvement priorities. The top 3 vote getters in this area have been the same 3 I've seen for the past 5 years and probably beyond that. Reconstructing existing streets, traffic flow improvements, and stormwater drainage improvements really continue to captivate most respondents. They find them somewhat to very important. They have high scores at the end, significantly above other types of capital improvement projects. You do see a little bit of fluctuation in the order. I think last year traffic flow improvements was first, but those top 3 have consistently been at really the 3 for quite some time. Okay. The next graph kind of looks at the overall satisfaction level with city services. And when looking over the results this year, I have to say in general, my gut reaction was that things were just, there were there was seemed to be a reluctance to give the sort of the highest rankings like we have seen in the past. And just in general, you saw a little bit of slippage in really all the categories across the board. And I don't really know what that means because, again, this is one snapshot in time, and you really take that into consideration when you look at it over time. So when you start to see a dip or a spike, you want to see what happens the next year. And so when we look at these, we see that a lot of them, the fire, rescue services, and library both remain extremely high. I don't think we've ever seen one higher than 99, so that was excellent with fire. But in general, they're just down slightly. So what you see in the graphs here is that the fire and rescue and library go up just a little bit, but all the other ones kind of stay the same. Or if you're looking at the orange bar, which is 2019, they just drop just a little bit. And you can see there's that slight variation in those over the past 5 years. And when I take this into consideration with the entire survey overall, that you see that little dip all the way through, I just feel like it's more of a sense of people sort of hesitating or holding back a little bit on those really, really top marks. And we'll just see what happens next year. It's not something that strikes me as something that's of a huge concern at this point. So this graph was a little different. So what we saw this year was respondents' experience with water. So either a drain backed up or we saw stormwater on a property. So of course we want to go back and look at what was the weather like that year. And we did find out that you have to remember respondents are getting this survey in March. They got it in March of 2019, and they're looking back probably over the last summer or the early spring, and what we had in 2018 was 12 inches of rain, sort of a extreme rainfall in June. And if you lived in a home or a place where you had never gotten any water in that past June, you got water in your home, I think you'd remember it. So that again is certainly a number, those numbers we'll have to watch because that graph is pretty impressive the way it jumps suddenly. And it's helpful to have some explanation from the weather on why that might have happened. But I just wanted to bring up another example. In public works under snow plowing,
I'm sorry, Mayor, could we stop and ask questions along the way? Or do you want us to hold off?
I just assume we can go through the whole program
Okay.
first and then come back.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I brought another example of that. Here you see snow plowing, the very last set of bars. Snow plowing on major streets. You see that little dip, and if you looked at some of the other street maintenance features, you saw a dip. And so, well, what was happening last year that might account for that? Here's a graph that shows what the weather was like in 2018 to 2019. This came from our Public Works Department. In 2018, 2019, we had 53 inches of snow compared to 44 inches the year before and 20 inches the year before that. So you want to look at that red line kind of in the middle, and you look along the horizontal axis are the months of the year, and you see the red line kind of go into the severe and extreme levels of the graph. And that's what our snowplow operators were up against last year. It was tough. And so when we see things that are reflecting that people are suggesting they were less than satisfied with performance, I think it's important to take into effect circumstances and to watch those responses and see what happens in future years and if there are extenuating circumstances that might explain some of those responses. Okay. The next part of the survey had to do with some questions that Healthiest Ames had asked you to place on the survey 2 years ago. So this is the second year of these health questions. Those questions looked at things like physical health, but they also looked at things like well-being, connectivity with your community, mental health, your sense of connection. In regards to physical health, how healthy do you feel? On on a poor to excellent scale, we have a lot of people who are really suggesting they're in fairly good health. And the one thing that we compare that against is the county rankings, where people may be self-reporting themselves a little bit better off than perhaps we would think they are. 7.4% is what we would is what was self-reported, where our county health ranking report suggests we should be more up in the 13%. This interesting data, I can tell you that Healthiest Ames is extremely excited by this data, and they really want to dig in. I found it a little bit confusing to just have 2 years of data to really understand what that meant. You saw some fluctuations in the numbers between 2018 to 2019, but without more baseline, to me, it was interesting, but I didn't draw a lot of conclusions for it. But I can tell you that Healthiest Ames is definitely digging into that data. The comments also were interesting: barriers to being physically active, connections within the community, volunteerism. That's interesting data, and I think it will be helpful, over time to keep touching back and seeing if those numbers are moving. Finally, one of the sort of standard graphs that we look at to judge how we're doing is the trends in overall satisfaction with City of Ames service quality. And this, again, kind of encapsulated what we were seeing. 98% of respondents ranked the City of Ames, ranked their satisfaction with City of Ames services as very good or good, which is fantastic, 98%. But what we saw is fewer people picking the very good category. There was actually a 6% drop, so we're still good, but not quite very good. And again, we'll watch that because, again, the composite, the 98% of respondents picking one of those two categories is really impressive. And I don't want to focus too much on the dips because overall it was a very good survey year. We asked people what the city should focus its attention on, and one of the ways that we do that is by making word clouds out of the comments. And so the bigger the font in the word cloud is, the more that those words showed up. And so you can see, that what the city should focus on sort of followed some of those trends in the survey itself: traffic flow, snow removal. There were a lot of comments that came along with those too. What's the best thing about Ames? Again, small town feel, that's a popular one. Friendly, Iowa State, clean, and those comments are worth reading. And then the final question we asked, which was a council-directed question added a couple years ago: what would make Ames cool? And it's always just kind of a fun question to go through those and read those. And those were the words that were popping up in that word cloud. So that is the resident satisfaction survey in a nutshell, and I will try to answer any questions you might have.
All right, Tim, your question?
Sure. Susan, can we go back to the city sewer, page 22? And I wondered about the weather as well on that. But could there be anything else? I mean, part of this I want to leave to staff in the departments to tease out the lessons, but in terms of things that the council should be paying attention to, there is no chart that I have seen ever that has shown that kind of fluctuation before. So I feel like we need to take just a moment with that, because certainly we've had other years we've had high levels of rain. And so any other thoughts of what we should be gleaning from that?
Well, my thought when I saw it was I looked at it a couple times and thought it couldn't be right. That's not. And I checked with Nora, who does our work, and she looked at it a couple of times as well. I think the way the question is worded could be fixed a little bit. Because at first I thought maybe it meant somebody's sump pump went on and it had never gone on before. But it really says drain back to up. I don't know. I'm sort of troubled by these results as well. I think we probably, to dig down into it, should look at how we're wording the question to understand if really that many respondents are having that kind of problem. Because the second part of the question said, did you report it to the city?
and the numbers were in the single digits. And of those numbers, there was a higher level of satisfaction with city response. Now, when we've had these smaller numbers in the past, the number of people who've reported it to the city have been in that same small percentage, but they've always been unhappy. And so there were just a lot of different things that were happening with these numbers that I'm not quite sure what they mean. And so we could look at modifying the questions. But I don't think that you can discount 12 inches of rain in 1 month. And I think half of that fell in like one day. So there was some really extreme weather last year that were probably overwhelming a lot of different systems.
And our infrastructure isn't sized for those larger rain events. Okay, and maybe John will take a look at that and get back to us if there's something there to note. The road service ratings on page 25. So is there anything there that you think in particular that we need to be paying attention to as we're starting to tee up for the CIP budget coming up here in January? Anything there that,
Well, I will say that whenever we get these responses back, we are looking at them, cross-tabbing them geographically. So we're asking, are residents in a particular part of town feeling left out, feeling like their conditions are worse? And we're not seeing those correlations.
Yeah.
So I trust the system that Public Works has in place for assessing roads and determining which ones need to be repaired. But they modify that on the fly when information changes and road conditions change. They will look at rearranging how they're repairing.
and then the two more quick ones on page 30, the Cyride ridership, very important part of our city transportation system. And we'd want to try to correlate this with actual Cyride data. So unlike the survey, we actually have hard data from transit. And so Chris, you're serving on that. Does this seem consistent with what the information you have on transit? Are we seeing that kind of dip in student ridership?
Well, this graph shows ridership at least once a week. So I guess you can infer that maybe ridership is down, and there are parts of town where, yes, Cyride ridership is significantly lower than it has been in the past.
So is this information then I'm sure shared with the department chairs and
It is, and it's not always consistent with Cyride, their own data. I can't account for why there are discrepancies sometimes. The survey always shows a higher non-student ridership than Cyride has shown in the past.
oh, that's interesting.
And I don't know why. I can't explain it. So there could be some things that are different. I've not seen wide or huge discrepancies, but are they exactly the same? No, not always. Sometimes there's differences. And over the past, I've talked with Sherry Kairos about different things. Cyride 2.0 was kind of being fleshed out in a lot of this. And you see that in the comments. People love it. People dislike it. It changed ridership, how people were using the bus. Some people used it more. Several people said I use it less. So there's all those factors going on, and we send the survey out. So, had we sent it out a couple of months later, a couple of months earlier, I'm not sure we would have gotten exactly the same results. But it is helpful for that snapshot in time to say, this is what we're seeing right now.
Okay, and one last question. This is on page 36, Parks and Rec facilities. And the restroom quality really sort of jumps off the page. People had a poorer ranking for that than I had been anticipating.
What I think
On this.
it may reflect is that we have some restrooms out of commission that we don't have. We've gotten a lot of feedback about Brookside Park. The restrooms have not been a popular, we have had some poor rankings in restrooms in the past, but I don't have a good answer for that one. And I haven't drilled down very much in that. And, we can take that one back. And actually, seeing that right now, you're right, it is.
Well, Keith's here. He's paying attention to this.
Go ahead.
But it's helpful to see. You don't have to respond, Keith. It's up to you if you have something you want to say. What I'm looking for are aberrations in the data, something that is a pretty significant fluctuation either in years past or compared to others that I think as a council we need to learn from. But we don't have to solve all those issues tonight. I just wanted to flag them.
So it really isn't too far off the last 5 years. If you look on page 37,
Right.
it's in there. It's never a good statistic to see. And I didn't see it on the graph and I didn't catch it until you just pointed it out. So it is a little bit of a surprise. And I'm going to drill down and see if maybe there's something we can, if it's coordinated with a certain geographic area or with a certain age group, then we might be able to drill down and see what that actually is trying to tell us. But I just don't know.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, and I don't have anything really to add at this point without looking at it more thoroughly. But we can come back at another time with a response.
And I don't necessarily formally ask for response. It's just something for this Parks and Rec to look at. This is a very valuable tool for us. Susan, we appreciate all it takes to put this together. Very valuable. If we're going to be data driven, we need to use this. So I appreciate your work on this. Thanks, John.
Other questions or comments?
Susan, have we ever tried to graph the trends in overall satisfaction for the last 37 years?
No, that would be fascinating, wouldn't it?
I'm curious, just because we have these snapshots, but I think it sometimes is nice to know longitudinally what our success rate has been. And obviously, we got a lot of data in here, but maybe that overall services category would be one that would be relatively easy to plumb. And at what point will you be taking input from us on what to remove or what to add?
So just to answer your first question about the 37 years. So we've had various groups who have done the survey, and I'm seeing that we have right now from 2005 to 2018. That's probably as long as IDRO has done it for us. And before that, it was ISU Extension, and I don't know who it was before then. So it's possible to try to graph it just by recreating from the paper copies what those levels of satisfaction would be, and that would be interesting. So I'll make a note to do that. I will come back in January or February to ask for thoughts, and maybe that's a time where you might want to drill down into the stormwater or water on property question. And if there's specific Parks and Recreation kinds of things that you're curious about, and I think you'll need to decide at that point, do you want to keep the health questions in there? Do you find that information helpful to you? Because Healthiest Ames really just wanted the opportunity to be able to have some kind of input periodically, and I don't think they expected an annual, not that they would argue with it. But probably, I think it's the first meeting in February, I try to come back, but I always want you to be thinking about, well, that might be a good thing to get feedback on. And sometimes there's very timely topics that come up and it fits in our schedule and we can get it in. And other times it's more, I want to put this in for a couple of years to get that baseline in history.
Other questions for Susan?
I have some. On page 45, this has to do with how people learn about city services.
Yep.
I was surprised to see that 27% of people prefer email to learn about city services. So my question is, do we have any idea what email service they might be referring to?
Well, I think it's if the way that I have always interpreted the question, if all those tools were available to you, how do you want to get your notice of a street closing? I want to be able to open my email and get it. So I don't think it's I guess I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you say this is what they would prefer to have happen. It's not that this is actually how they're receiving the email.
Oh, no, that's why I always find it kind of a trick question.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that they're open to it. And when we started adding this question, and it was a long time ago when we added it, it's when we started asking people when they signed up for utility billing if we could get their email address. And we would say, well, it's because if we ever got enough email addresses and we had a system that we could push information out, that we would do it. And now we do have on our website e-notification. So you can sign up that way and you will get your information that way if you have self-selected and signed up.
I would say in addition to that, we have in our user database for Parks and Recreation, we have over 6,000 households and their emails. And then we do put out information monthly. We do a monthly e-newsletter. And then we also do it with certain programming and stuff. We do it multiple times, over the course of a month and throughout the year. So that may play into that a little bit too, if they're Parks and Recreation users.
Yeah, so we started adding these questions in, gathering the data almost ahead of being able to provide the service to see if that was something people were open to. And yeah, Parks and Rec is collecting email addresses. We're collecting email addresses in utility billing, and we're using them in different ways to shoot out different messages. So, and then e-notification as well.
Did you happen to check, I don't know what you do, cross-referencing, whatever you do to see what sort of people were answering email, like student respondents or other residents? Because I've discovered in my classes this semester, the students are saying, we prefer email for communication in general. And when asked about the city, they said if the city could send us emails, we would get the information more easily. And so I just wonder if the offset between the letter and the email is an indication of homeowner versus student or renter.
I don't know that I've looked at the crosstab recently of how people want to receive their information against the demographics, like which groups are picking which one, but that would be interesting to look at. My own experience has been that it's really hard to pigeonhole a certain demographic into a particular communication tool because people always surprise you. So, but maybe there's some trends that we're not aware of and we could look at it.
On page 48, there was a question having to do with what information should be included in Ames's website. And I just noticed one of the respondents said that they wish they knew when the snow ordinance has gone into effect. So just one person said this. But it brought to mind just a suggestion, and that is that as people start using the Ames on the Go app more, it has a feature for pushing out notifications to people. And this might be something that would be appropriate because it's very timely in nature. You need to know that, oh, hey, it's tonight. I have to go do it now.
Okay.
So I don't know how practical that is, but I just wanted to mention it.
Well, one of the things that I picked up in doing the survey, and I pick it up every year, is in the comments, how many people say they wish there were things that we have.
Yeah, sure.
And so it just makes me realize, again, the work is never done. Continue to push out the work because we do have these things. Particularly, it became apparent to me to people who said, I don't want to participate in a solar project because of A, B, and C. And yet those were not really issues that were going to be a problem. They weren't barriers to participating. Several people said, I'm too old and I'll never be able to use my panel, and obviously didn't know they could turn it back in. So.
Finally, under the neighbors you know category, and this is on page 56, I was surprised to see that the survey shows that 9% of the non-students say that they know none of their neighbors. That seems really high.
I have found, and I thought it was an odd statistic last year as well, that students in general seem more connected to their neighbors than non-students. I don't have an explanation for it. It seems counterintuitive to me. And the numbers have swapped a little bit between last year and this year, and just in the general health categories. And that's why I sort of think, wow, one more year of this data might be more helpful because these first 2 years are kind of scattered and I'm not quite sure what to make of them. But I had the same reaction that the numbers about people being connected in the community seemed high for non-students.
Yeah, so I just I think to the extent that that's really true, 9% of our non-students don't know any of their neighbors. I think this is something that we should try to remember and maybe improve. I don't know how to do it, but I'd like to be in a community where people do know their neighbors. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, to your point, David, on page 57, figure 15, I found that interesting as well, too, in terms of sense of community in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
At 44%, either say it's not at all strong or it's not so strong. And so I had the same question in terms of what can we do? I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we have those neighborhood trailers, which get used a lot, the neighborhood party trailer. I think we have 2, is that correct?
I think it's just one, but we've
One.
doubled the amount of time it can be reserved.
That's what it is. And, but are there things we can do to try and create more of a sense of community amongst the neighborhoods? Like one of the council's goals is, keeping those neighborhoods strong. Other questions? Several of us went to the Iowa League of Cities conference last week? I lose track a couple weeks ago. Anyway, recently we went. And it was an interesting breakout session that I went to, and I thought it was kind of insightful, and that is, they asked the question is, when you do community surveys, do you let people know what the results of the survey are? And I thought, boy, that's really a good point to say, we heard you. But then the other thing is that, are there action items or follow-up things that council is doing in response to that? Because then it kind of validates the fact that they're spending time. So I'm just curious, can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so we always send a press release out after we've presented to council, and it always goes in city side, just the results and where to get. I mean, it's just so large that really it's just a notice that says, here's some of the high level information you'd find in here, and here's where you get the report. And I think the previous 10 years are located on our website under the city manager's page, where you can go back and go to any year and read it. As for follow-up, when there are specific concerns in there, if somebody says, please check out garbage at this address, we forward that on to the right departments. Higher level kinds of things, I always just say, this is your information that you take into budget. And you make decisions knowing that this is one of your data points to consider. And so, it's not a point by point follow-up, but it's just, again, we're a data-driven organization. That's what we use to make our decisions. And the information is out there for everybody to use. For a lot of departments, it provides some of our benchmarking data for our budget presentations. And it's a way that we kind of gut check ourselves with the residents. And again, not every city does it, and cities that do these surveys don't always do them every year. So I think that's pretty special that we have managed to continue this partnership with Iowa State, because I am very aware that our cost for doing this survey is lower than other cities will probably spend on theirs. And it's been, I think, a real successful collaboration.
Mayor, when I attended the Congressional Cities Conference for the National League of Cities back in March, I went to 2 NLC university sessions on the Smart Cities program with data-driven decision-making, and I was surprised at how few people who were at those sessions had this sort of survey. And in fact, several people, after I told them what Ames did, asked for contact information, and I put them in touch with Susan so that they could find out what we did for our survey. And it did surprise me that we seem to be one of very few communities in attendance at those sessions that did this and did it consistently. Although some other university communities seem to be doing something similar. So maybe it's that with universities present, there's more of a need and an interest and the cheaper cost to do it.
So would it be reasonable to deduce from the size of the sampling from the survey that we've captured what some of the priorities are for the community? I think that's what I read in the introduction, was that not you, but the the survey expert at Iowa State believed that the response rate and the sampling was a good snapshot of what, and I'll let you answer that question. I have a follow-up question.
So it is a healthy response rate, and it always has concerned me that will people really sit down and fill out 12 pages of handwritten questions? And yet they continue to do that. And our demographic distribution still remains, fairly, it's not perfect to census numbers, but it's not bad. And so we have this way of testing. Are we really getting the right mix of respondents that reflect the demographics of our community? And I think that we are. Where I think I've started to get a little bit more concerned is that I've been here 15 years and we've done the survey for 15 years. And I think we're starting to see we haven't changed the questions because I'm afraid to change them because they're benchmarking questions. But I don't know that people understand the questions all the time. So we don't, even though the council's been excellent about saying, let's let them write in their answers, let's tell them things. They don't understand the way that we've divided up the survey. They don't really understand capital improvements are different from ongoing services. So I feel like it's still kind of steeped in government. And so, is it, and you don't want to just throw it out and start over, but yet I wonder, John, are we getting what we really need to hear from citizens? Or are we limiting their comments to these topic areas that we've already decided? And I don't have an answer for that. If you wanted to discuss that in February, you could open that can of worms.
Well, as council goes into goal setting session in January, I'm just trying to get our arms around, we represent the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, this is a tool that council can use and rely on in terms of what, we're looking at in terms of what people are giving us feedback on. Besides that, emails, an occasional snail mail, letter, and conversations with the community. I'm just trying to say, how can we really leverage the feedback we're getting? What I found fascinating was what wasn't brought up in points or issues that we hear from people from time to time. And so consequently, to me, that was a little bit telling as well, too. Out of this whole sample base, what we're hearing sometimes vocally, we're not seeing in response written-wise.
I think the survey itself is reaching the right demographic. Are the questions providing you with the information, or are they providing the respondents with the tool to write what's on their mind? That's where I'm not positive.
Okay. That's right. Well, I think it'd be interesting if we could somehow, and when we go through goal setting session in January, as we review this or pull this back out again, and if we could somehow publicize that, okay, in response to the survey, we're asking staff in the next, it'll be 2 years, because we'll be setting 2-year goals again, to start looking at these particular topics. I think it would just show the people that are taking the survey that they're being heard and just validating that. So anyway, anything else for Susan? Thanks for your efforts. Appreciate that very much.
I've ever gotten. Thank you for your interest.
All right, move on to item 27, hearing on proposed amendments to zoning code, chapter 29, and the rental code, chapter 13, and the creation of a new chapter 35 to establish definitions, standards, and enforcement procedures for licensing of guest lodging in specified zoning districts. Kelly?
Good evening. Once again, we are back trying to move forward with the guest lodging ordinances. As you described, there's 3 different ordinances that are included tonight. And we have Eloise and Jane here also who have been working very hard to accommodate the different questions and interests that have come up over the many months. We don't have a long presentation. I think we've tried to address everything, and you've seen this incrementally now almost once a month for the last 6 months, sometimes more than once a month. So we've tried to follow up and address your comments from September, and we've put together a comprehensive draft. We think it's approvable tonight. So what we really want to answer is your questions about these final details. And if there are no questions, to move on to public comment and see if this is going to be first reading tonight.
All right, questions for staff? All right, I'll declare the public hearing on the proposed amendments to zoning code, chapter 29, rental code, chapter 13, and creation of a new chapter 35 to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address council on this topic? All right, seeing none, I'll close public hearing and entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance.
One comment, I think city attorney did note that the vacation lodging definition between chapter 29 and chapter 35, there was missing a word. So we are correcting chapter 35 and making sure we're matching those up. So after tonight, if this passes, there'll be a slight tweak to add the phrase for occupancy into vacation lodging. So other than that, there's no other noted edits at this time.
Okay. Questions? All right. Entertain motion on first passage of ordinance amending chapter 29.
Move on first.
Second.
Discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Burton.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Thank you. Entertain motion on first passage of ordinance amending chapter 13.
Move on first reading.
Second.
Roll call?
Nelson.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Thank you. And entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance creating chapter 35.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
All right, very good. Thank you.
If I could just make a comment, putting this together was a very heavy lift and it's a lot of work. We appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kelly, do we have next item 28? Did you receive the original signatures on this?
I believe that we do have a complete set of original signatures allowing you to proceed with the public hearing. I'm getting a nod yes from the city attorney. So yes, you may proceed with the public hearing on this item.
Okay. As council may recall, this is something where we've been waiting for document with all original signatures, and we postponed this or continued the hearing from several meetings prior. So, do you have any questions for staff on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing on 415 Stanton Avenue contract rezoning agreement to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Luke Jensen, 2519 Chamberlain. I appreciate your patience for us to collect the signatures and get to this point to have our hearing tonight. The staff report outlines pretty clearly what our hopes and our intentions are with the amendment to the developers agreement. That would provide some additional flexibility with who our occupants can be at the Crawford, and we'll continue the momentum that we have with the project there. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, Luke. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I declare the public hearing to be closed and entertain a motion on first passage of ordinance revising the age limit restriction for the RH rezoning.
Move on first.
Second.
All right, moved in second. Any discussion?
So just to know, I haven't received anything from SCAN or any of the people that might have otherwise objected. Has anyone else received anything?
I think I might have, in response to my newsletter, gotten one or two that were opposed from the neighborhood, but not, I mean, it wasn't a huge outcry, I wouldn't say.
Yep.
Other questions? Discussion?
I mean, I can understand their concerns. You know, we went into this with the agreement that it'd be 100% with one resident 55 or older, but I mean, the new standard still conforms to, you know, standards for retirement communities, you know, and I think we want, we talk about wanting a diverse mix of residents, right? That actually makes a healthy neighborhood to have that. And I think that, the 20% of units is limited enough, so.
I'm convinced, given that we have 100% of the owners in the building signing on in agreement.
That's compelling, I think, too.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call.
Corey,
Aye.
Batchor,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Keating, Hanson.
Aye.
Thank you. And entertain a motion on resolution approving the amended contract rezoning agreement contingent upon agreement containing signatures of all property owner. And actually, we have received those, correct?
Yeah, yes, we possess them at this point.
Okay.
So
So it actually would be, excuse me, I think that would be, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. This should be a resolution approving amended contract rezoning agreement, period, because you have received the information necessary. So it would just be, motion should read, resolution approving amended contract rezoning agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Question, comments? Roll call?
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Keating, Hanson.
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Okay, it's 29, hearing and authorization to issue hospital revenue bonds for Mary Greeley Medical Center Series 2019 in amount not to exceed $35 million. And Gary Bottin appeared 2 weeks ago explaining the situation for the hospital. I see that he is here in the audience with two distinguished gentlemen who I presume will also answer any questions that you may have, should you have any. So before we go into open the hearing, do you have any questions for Gary? Otherwise, we'll move forward on the hearing. All right, no questions. I declare the public hearing on authorization to issue hospital revenue bonds for Mary Greeley Medical Center Series 2019, the amount not to exceed $35 million to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed and entertain a motion on resolution authorizing the sale and issuance, setting parameters, and approving a fourth supplemental indenture of trust, bond purchase agreement, and other documents in connection therewith.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
This is yet another chapter in our beloved Mary Greeley Hospital's commitment to provide excellent service to the community. It's very exciting. Be fun to watch and see how this develops. So congratulations.
Anything else? All right, roll call.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Keating, Hanson.
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Very good. Thanks for coming, gentlemen. Item 30, hearing on 2018-19 sanitary sewer rehabilitation siphon, which is continued from 9/24/19. Any questions for staff on this one? All right, I declare the public hearing on the 2018-19 sanitary sewer rehabilitation siphon project to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Synergy Contracting LLC of Bondurant, Iowa, in the amount of $1,440,778.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion? Roll call.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Keating, Hanson.
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Okay, item 31. Any questions for staff on this item regarding the 2019-2020 sanitary sewer rehab for Munn Woods? All right, declare the public hearing on the 2019-2020 sanitary sewer rehabilitation Munn Woods to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding the contract to Visa Sewer Incorporated of Pewaukee, Wisconsin, in the amount of $2,190,212.40.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Nelson.
Aye.
Edie Hanson.
Aye.
O'Hare.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Okay, item 32, any questions for staff on the public utility easement at 2812 Hyatt Circle under item 32? Seeing none, declare the public hearing on vacation of a public utility easement at 2812 Hyde Circle to be open. Is anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion on resolution vacating easement.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
Edie Hanson.
Aye.
O'Hare.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 33, hearing on Brookside Park restroom renovation project. Any questions for staff on this one?
This one I did get a lot of feedback about. What we saw, I mean, you probably saw some on Ames People, and then I got some from my newsletter too. People really want to see this project done. At least the feedback I got was they want to see it done and see it quality. So I understand if we need to rebid because they were high, but I mean, I take this this renovation is pretty important, I think, to the users of the parks. So whatever we need to do to get a quality product and have it at a reasonable price, I think is good. And I think staff's recommendation is fine, though.
Keith, I had one question. Maybe this is a question for John. It just struck me as a layman that the architectural estimate well, tell you what, let's just go ahead. Well, I can forgo that. We can move on.
Do you have what's the game plan, Keith,
I was gonna-
on this after action's taken, going to redesign it?
So right now, the architect has reached out to the two bidders and is waiting for responses in regards to why their estimates are so much higher than what the engineer's estimate was. And then based on that, we'll take a look and see if we need to do something different, or it may wind up being that we may have to find some additional funding, for the project. But I would agree with Bronwyn in regards to, people want to see it get done. The Friends group, that we have the MOU with that you approved earlier tonight, they are all in favor of the what we're doing with that restroom. So it's something that we need to figure out a way to make it happen.
So if it is something we get feedback from in a timely manner, is it still a spring project at this point?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is as soon as we get that information, we'll turn around and we'll bid it again, and see if there's any changes that we need to do or clarifications maybe in the materials that bidders thought maybe we were thinking you have to do all of this, but maybe it's a much smaller thing. But once we get that feedback, we'll turn around, bid it again, and then hopefully we can get it done in the spring.
I'm a little confused about the alternative 1 versus 2. It sort of sounds like there's it's in process to speak to the bidders and to find out whether the bids are reasonable or not.
Right.
Right. And so alternative 2 provides space for that to happen and then possibly accepting those bids upon finding that they're reasonable. But the recommendation is actually to not do that, but rather to just reject the bids and rebid again.
Correct. Because right now, we don't have any funding identified. And Mark may be able to help out with this, that if we just report bids are only good for a certain amount of time. And if we don't find the funding in that time, then we'd have to rebid anyways.
I see.
So, Mark, do you know what that?
I'm not sure what the timeframe is on that.
Yeah, I want to say it might be 60 days with it, but.
So you're still advising alternative 1 to accept the report and reject the bids?
Correct.
Thank you.
And normally in bidding protocol, you only had 2 bidders and they may want to bid on it again. The Master Builders of Iowa recommends that you change the scope of the project at least 20%. In other words, trying to reduce, change the cost, or allow at least 6 months before you bid the job if you're going to try and bid the same job again. In other words, out of fairness to those 2, because technically a low bid someone's going to try and hit that low, go a little bit below that bid. There's a huge disparity between the low bid and the second bid as well, too.
But we
So-
wouldn't wait that 6 months to rebid.
Pardon me?
We wouldn't wait that 6 months to rebid, right?
Or you need it. This is a. It's not a law. It's just out of the courtesy to people who are bidding projects. So you don't have to, but you should. If you don't wait 6 months, you probably should change the scope of the project so the person who was low bidder.
Well, that definitely makes me want to do alternative 2 then.
Changing the scope of the project would have to come back to us for approval as well, right?
Yeah, and, excuse me, and right now, I don't see us changing 20% of the project.
Right. So
No.
why not alternative 2 then, which would buy you a little more time to get those answers about if those bids are reasonable.
Yeah,
And we'd have to
and-
find
and
the
that-
money.
And that would
We
be
don't have the
reasonable.
funds.
Right.
That's a problem we have.
Yeah, but I mean, the alternative is to, out of consideration for the
Yeah.
current bidders, to wait 6 months before we rebid it. That's a long time.
Well, but you can bid it in the February, March, and then that would still be your 6 month.
Because one of the things with the architect is, one of the things that they did mention is that you don't know how busy, people are. And for right now, we put it out, we gave them until, I believe it was June 1st to complete the project with it. And if we wait a little bit, there may be some people that finish projects, may have an opportunity that their schedules open up and they didn't bid it now, but they would bid it in, at a later time.
Keith, do you think that part of the reason for the higher than expected bid is because it's a renovation rather than a construction where they know what they're doing? There may be some level of uncertainty about going in with an older structure and trying to renovate that.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and that's one of the things that the architect is trying to find out, from the two bidders. And I think we'll find out in about a month once, because the council just approved the plans for the Ines Grove restroom, tonight, which includes a renovation and a new restroom. So we'll see if that holds water or not. But I think that's always a concern. We do have 5% contingency built in, to this project, into the estimates for some of that unknown. But yeah, I think that's always a concern.
So I guess I'm going to go back to it's $95,000 is not a small amount of money, but I would think we could probably find that somewhere. And I guess I'm curious as to what that time window actually is for us to be able to do that before we would reject the bids. Well,
the bids came in on September 25th, which was just a little under 2 weeks ago. I think we can wait another 2 weeks until the next council meeting.
Yep.
Find answers for you.
I think,
Yeah.
I kind of like that idea too, just because it would give us some more information that
Is there a
Yes.
downside to
Right.
waiting a little bit.
number 2, alternative 2?
No, I don't think. Because we can always reject them
Still
later.
yeah, we can
Yeah.
reject it in 2 weeks.
Well,
Yeah.
and you might add to alternative 2 is that if you want to ask staff to find ways to fund it too.
Some suggestions,
difference.
perhaps, yeah.
I mean, that's another option. I mean, not that they will, but maybe there's some options to try and find funding.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
And I will say too, is that these bidders spend a lot of time and their own money, to bid the project. And so it's not been uncommon. This would defer to city policy and purchasing and the whole like, but sometimes you can ask for forbearance for another 2 weeks if you're trying to get something worked out. And I've seen times where contractors will give you an extra 2 weeks if they know there's a chance they might be able to get the job, as it's bid, and especially since you have getting feedback from the community. This is a really important project.
Yeah.
That all being said, I'll move alternative 2 with the additional direction that we come back in 2 weeks with potential funding mechanisms.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Oh, you know what? Put that on pause now. I got a public hearing I open up first, all right? I declare the public hearing on the Brookside Park restroom renovation project to be open. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, close public hearing. Everyone understand the motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
All right, on item 34, hearing a water pollution control facility methane engine and generator replacement project. Any questions for staff on this project, on this topic? All right, declare the public hearing on the water pollution control facility methane engine generator replacement project to be open. Is anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing, entertain a motion and resolution approving final plans, specifications, and awarding the contract to the Waldinger Corporation of Des Moines, Iowa, in the amount of $1,554,270.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Corriere.
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item 35, first passage of ordinance assigning wards and precincts to newly annexed properties generally located south of the current city limits between University Boulevard, 530th Avenue, and Cedar Lane. Any questions for staff on this particular item? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address under public comment on this particular ordinance? Seeing none, close public input, and staff has asked for consideration to also have second and third readings tonight in advance of the election coming up. So we'll take a motion and a second on the first passage to begin with.
Move on first?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Roll call?
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
And staff has asked for council to consider having both a second, third reading and adoption tonight as well.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, roll call on that motion, please.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Okay,
Move on second.
Second.
actually,
Oh.
you can move on second, third, and adoption all in one
Oh,
motion.
sure. I would move on second, third, and adoption.
Second.
Roll call?
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
Very good, thank you. Okay, this is one of the items that was put in the amended agenda, is the second passage of ordinance rezoning with master plan of 507 Lincoln Way from downtown gateway commercial to highway-oriented commercial. Is there a motion?
Move
Move
on
on.
second?
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Nelson.
Abstain due to potential conflict of interest.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
No.
Garten.
Aye.
Okay, carried. Item 36, ISU Research Park Urban Renewal Area. Any questions for staff on this topic? All right, seeing none, entertain. All right, first of all, open up public comment. So anyone that wants to address council on the first passage of ordinance correcting the boundaries for tax increment financing district number 1. Seeing none, close public input. Entertain motion on first passage.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Also open up public comment input on first passage of ordinance creating tax increment financing district number 2. Anyone in the audience want to address council on this topic? Seeing none, entertain motion on first passage.
Move on first?
Second.
Roll call.
Corriere.
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Okay. Item 37, third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4393, amending chapter 13 rental code to add rent abatement as an enforcement tool to add 1-year letter of compliance prohibition as an enforcement tool and to freeze the bedroom counts for all properties in the near campus neighborhoods to what would have been allowed on January 1st, 2018.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call?
Fletcher.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Edie Hanson.
Aye.
Lori Garcia.
Aye.
And entertain motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4394 on proposed amendment to zoning code related to bicycle parking incentives in commercial and industrial areas.
Move on third.
Second.
All right, roll call?
Martin.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Edie Hanson.
Aye.
Lori Garcia.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, there are 2 items that should be on your at the dais for you. One's from Damien, traffic engineer, on Stadium View Apartments, the before and after speed study. Take this under advisement or any action on this?
Do we know if this has been released to the neighborhood that requested us to follow this in the first place?
I don't know.
So I would like to make a motion that we have, I suppose it would be Damien, but have staff contact the Oak to Riverside neighborhood to give them the results of the study.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Carried. And then we have a letter from Story County Secondary Road Department regarding intersection of Hyde, Grant, and West 190th for possible traffic mitigation measures.
Move for a memo from staff on this one.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. All right, moving on to council comments. Start with Gloria tonight.
I want to let council know that in addition to that memo I promised you, or note I promised you on my nonpartisan elections, I have another thing that I will be sending to you regarding the possible reintroduction of the parts of the property maintenance code. So I'll send you something on that, and we don't have to talk about that tonight.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Very good. David?
Yes, following up on the rezoning of the former KFC lot, I think I explained to council my opposition to that. It's just about the process that I think wasn't followed as well as we need to generally, but I understand council is moving forward on this. And I'd also like to point out that I'm not trying to signal opposition to the larger redevelopment project. We have to wait and get that information and hear about it. But related to this, assuming that we move forward with the subsequent readings for the rezoning of that lot, we're going to be left with a strange situation there, where if you look at the lot immediately to the west of the old KFC lot, you end up with a single lot that is in the DGC zone. Doesn't really make sense anymore. That's my opinion. So what I would like to do is ask staff for a memo on any recommendations they have for the lot to the west of the KFC lot and associated considerations.
A second.
Okay. Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed or abstaining?
I'll probably abstain from that one too.
Okay. Motion carried. Anything else, Dave?
Thank you. One more topic, and this has to do with the nature of our appointments as council members to outside boards. We've discussed this some lately. It's been my understanding that due to my appointment to a board as a council member, that records that I receive from that board are therefore open records under the law because they have to do with my council appointment. Well, that's my understanding. I'd like to ask the city attorney if he can affirm that or prepare a memo for us along these lines to make sure that we're not overlooking any exceptions given the specific boards that we're appointed to.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Carried.
Thank you, that's all.
Nothing tonight.
Chris?
Back in June, we received survey results from the Chamber and ADC relating to some of the processes with development inspections. And at that time, we chose not to do anything other than receive the report. What I'd like us to consider is to go back and actually refer that to staff for a response to see if they have made any process changes or learned anything or have anything to say about some of the comments that were made. So I would move that we refer that back to staff for a response.
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Carried.
Thank you. Nothing else?
Roman?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Yeah, I have two things. So the first is sort of just saying something because last Tuesday, while we weren't meeting, it was News Engagement Day. And as a former student journalist, and there are two student journalists also in this room, I think it is really important to recognize all the work that journalism has done to connect us with the community, and especially in the broader context when looking at like the inclusive crosswalk, let's say. The response that we've gotten because of all the journalism that's been behind it has been amazing, and I've been really warmed by all that. And so last Tuesday, on News Engagement Day, I tweeted out and told a lot of people about all the how much I've appreciated the coverage of that and the work that we all have done, as well as the journalists, in connecting us with the larger world and all the appreciativeness that we've had from people outside of the Ames community about that. And so I just want journalists, whether they're students or not, because that was really important and I really appreciated that and it was something cool. The next thing is that I met with the mayor, student body president, and the student body vice president to talk about student issues and the like, and sort of formulating the beginning parts of what might be talked about at the joint city council meeting. And one thing that was brought up on a few occasions, but something that we deemed probably wouldn't be good to bring up at the joint meeting, we're talking about safety issues with the flashing signs. I reached out and got an update on that. So that's currently in the process, I understand. But there's one area that we had mentioned that wasn't a part of that discussion. I think the two places they're considering were across Jeff's Pizza on Lincoln Way, right off Stanton, to put a flashing sign, as well as on South 16th in front of the Grove and Copper Beach. There's also a location where there's a lot of foot traffic that I've heard from a couple individuals, of children in particular, and their parents and children are crossing the spot, and it seems to be kind of a dangerous spot, and that is across Stang, at the spot where Veenkerd Drive turns into Blankenberg Drive. And so I was thinking that it'd be good to add that to the list of areas that staff could look into when it comes to adding those flashing crosswalk signs, because it is something that is a safety concern that some people had raised.
So do you anticipate that being a subject for our discussion in the joint meeting, or something you'd like to have our staff take a look at?
I think that's more a staff thing, because when it comes to safety issues, I definitely think that's of value to students, but I think that due to time constraints, I think that there are more pressing issues and things that we can, because I think the discussion will really be like, yeah, we should add flashing signs in those areas. And I've talked to a lot of people in student government, and really these three areas have been the main ones to come up on each occasion. And so I think the discussion and groundwork and footwork on it has already happened, as far as figuring out where these flashing signs would be of use to students. And so I think that recommending that to be looked into by staff would be, I think, the best option, I guess.
It's sort of a technical type of analysis, and so we sort of like rely on our traffic engineer. But I think it's good to have an opportunity. If students have concerns, we certainly would like to hear those.
And so you mentioned there were two other locations you'd already.
Yep, and those are the ones that I think staff are currently looking into.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that I can't make a motion, obviously, but
Sure.
to also look into this third area would be an important part of that.
Want to council want to pick up that motion?
I'll be happy to do that. I think I made the motion for the other two.
Mhm.
Could you give me the location on Stang again, please?
Yeah, so it is right in front of where the intersection of Wienker and Blankenberg. So that's like a road that actually becomes two different roads when crossing Stang. So that intersection with Stang. Yeah.
So I would move that we add the intersection of Stang Road with Wienker and Blankenberg to the list of sites to investigate for flashing beacons.
Just to clarify, I'm having
Is there,
trouble,
is there a second?
A second.
A second. Thank
I'm
you.
having trouble clarifying where that road is located. Is that over by UV?
I think
right
so,
there.
yeah.
It is.
Golf course.
Right where the,
Yes, it is.
So, that is a very tricky, road because of the amount of north-south
Yeah.
traffic that receives.
There's obviously a four-way stoplight not that far to the north of there too.
Well, I think that we're looking for just for staff input, and staff may come back and just say that we understand that, but maybe there's other alternatives as well. So I think all we're looking for right now is just a memo and follow up on that. So.
And I guess to not pile on to that, but just something else to think about as we work through that is if the location, that particular location might still be institutional road.
I think
It
you're
is,
right.
and so is South 16.
And if you move it any further south, it absolutely is. If you move it further north, it's a city street. So we just have to, it may not be
It's a
just us, or it may be
location.
the university, it may be a partnership. But that's going to be part of that discussion.
yeah.
Don't disagree that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's tricky. I mean, I was a student and lived in UV a long time ago, and it's a bit of Frogger crossing, staying there depending on the hour of the day. So I appreciate their concern.
All right, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think you're,
Sorry. I forgot something, if I could add one more topic. Earlier, when discussing the minutes, I'm recalling the words that I used in the motion, and I asked that we strike something from minutes. I'm not sure that I asked that we approve the minutes otherwise. Do we need to do that, or was that implicit?
let's,
It's a good point. I bet you're right.
I would, okay, so I would move that we, oh,
she's
she's
checking.
Okay, great. I would move that we otherwise, in addition to the previous decision, that we otherwise approve the minutes
As amended?
as amended.
Can we do this in council comments?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mark?
Why not?
We're still in session.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's on the
We've
agenda.
never done that.
First time for
Nice
everything.
catch, though.
Right. All right, so moved and, who seconded?
I
it?
second it.
You get, Lori, get that? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Good catch. Anything else?
Crisis averted.
Thank you for bringing up the journalists, because you guys are the unsung heroes. I mean, you guys put a lot of time in, you listen to a lot of stuff. Frankly, I don't know how you keep track of all this stuff, but we do appreciate it. And I do subscribe to the daily. I think you guys do a good job of trying to cover what goes on in council. So thank you for your efforts, and I know it's a lot of work, and you're behind the scenes, so thank you. And well, second what Devin said too, we had an outstanding meeting with Devin and President and Vice President. Great conversation, and had some good topic discussion and kind of winnowing through some things, and we're really going to be focusing on topics to discuss. And actually, that's the speaker's responsibility, not our responsibility, but I think you're going to communicate with the speaker. We talked about is what really falls under the jurisdiction and policy making of council versus there's a lot of things we talked about, and we just kind of parse through them. Not much we can really do, on that. Understand the concerns, but we really can't delve into that, so we can try and get our arms wrapped around it. But very excited, and that's actually 2 weeks from tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we're going to have our joint session, so looking forward to that. I have a number of things. One is we've been trying to get a joint meeting with Mary Greeley Medical Center board set up, and just before the meeting, the question was posed. Apparently, this was set up a number of years ago when council delegated more powers to the trustee board. And the question is do you want to continue? And I immediately thought, yeah, I think it's a really good idea. I think it's good to understand what's going on because it is a city-owned hospital still.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's also appropriate for council to weigh in. And this is not a ploy to try and get you to commit to anything to a specific date, but would you agree that it is good to continue to have an annual meeting to at least hear what's going on? And if so, I'll just take all your head nods as an affirmation that it's a good idea, and we'll continue to work towards getting that date set. So, secondly, I'll go back to Merlin's public comments. I'm going to follow up with an email with him, and I don't know if he's watching or not. But first of all, he talked about clarifying if public funds will be used, and I think that I want to just clarify. As it stands right now, there's absolutely no indication, period, of a bond issue being asked for the public. That was closed. The public spoke, and they said no. I do think that in Merlin's mind, and I'm not certain if he's not right, that TIF could be conceived as public funds. And I just want to go on record in the minutes, and I'll follow up with him in an email saying, I am not going to go on record as saying that TIF would not potentially come before council to be considered, because it may be. I'm not saying it will, won't say it won't. But I just wanted to make that clarification to make sure that in the future he doesn't come back and say, well, the mayor said that no public funds will be used. I think it's fair to be transparent with him, explain what's going on. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, because David and Gloria, but there's absolutely been no discussion on, and I don't think the bond issue is even, it's not going to be a publicly owned fund, I mean, a publicly owned facility. It'll be privately owned, essentially.
The only thing that has been discussed is that there will be a feasibility study to test the market for this project. So,
and thank you for the clarification on the $25,000. Appreciate that. And the question is, he raised the question, is there an annual report that is put forth by ACBB? And the answer to that question is
yes,
It's an annual
see it.
report. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So I would just ask Brian if we could find that report and make that available, or send him a link on how to get to that. So, because he asked that question, I think the point is, if it is, let's go ahead and make sure it's available and transparent. So, this coming Friday, and this is kind of another thing that Merlin brought up, but this coming Friday, Governor Reynolds will be in the Campanile Room on Iowa State campus, 3:30. And there is actually a ceremony celebrating the full site certification for Prairie View, the 700 some acres that will be out there. I did get an email. I'd be happy to forward it to all of you with the official invitation. I've been asked to say a few words, but the point is that the whole intent is to get that completely teed up, queued up. So if someone comes in, they want to go ahead and build on it, you got the ability for them to go ahead and move quickly. I know it goes slowly, but that's really important in the community. Two more things and I'll be done. Yesterday we celebrated groundbreaking of Habitat for Humanity. Tim and David joined me, read a proclamation, but that is just a tremendous opportunity to partner between the city and Habitat to celebrate providing housing for people that are in need of it. And it's a very wonderful family with two young kids. He's actually from Ames, but I'm going to say this country wrong. Was it Eritrea? That's where she is from, and that's where I think his ancestors are from. So anyway, and last thing, I just had a question for Susan. A while back, we talked about populating our website under sustainability in terms of all the things that we're doing.
Yes.
And I was looking at that tonight when we were going through the survey. There's a lot of things that we're doing that I think we could also add to it, like the council approved the the biodiesel fuel for the 5 trucks. Council approved, I think it's 6 or 7 hybrid vehicles, 5 for the police department, and then there's 2 more, I think, for different departments. that will significantly reduce, carbon emissions. We got the greenhouse gas inventory that is, that proposal is out. We should be getting that back as well too. I think we can kind of go on and on, but there's a lot of things that our community is doing already. We got the solar plan. The solar thing is getting launched, getting updates. But I know you got a lot on your plate. But just
we're building this parallel page. We just haven't published it.
okay, yeah, cool. Great. So I think it's just it's important. Our community is asking, for what, and I think it's important for us to publicize and celebrate what we are doing because we're doing a lot of good things.
Mayor, I had a couple of the things that I just remembered, and one of them is a question. We talked with regard to the citizen satisfaction survey about the goal setting session, and it reminded me, when do we put forward things we'd like to see at the goal setting session as part of discussion?
Ryan?
You mean agenda items?
Yeah,
Or the topics of the goals themselves?
Agenda items, if we've got, I don't know, is that an agenda item or is that a topic? I'm not sure. The questions of, Susan's question about should we be concerned about how we phrase our questions on the citizen satisfaction survey? Are we getting what we need to hear from the citizens? Came up as maybe this is a topic you'd want to discuss, and that made me wonder, is that something that we would have to put on an agenda? Is that something that we would consider?
So that's something that you might incorporate into a task or an objective, you mean?
Okay, well, I don't know.
It sounds like that might be the direction you're headed.
I don't know what direction I'm headed. I just don't want to lose that thought. And so I'm wondering if we are collecting these things that have come up that could be.
Who aggregates, or is that under your realm?
Well, we just look at our prior goals.
What could you?
But that's not related to any prior goal.
No.
And
Maybe we just suggest that they would just send an email to Brian and to Steve and just say there's things that you're thinking you'd like to have at least considered.
Yeah, of all those things being the priority of the whole council. So
No,
I would keep that in your own list of initiatives and bring that. And you can all be doing that individually.
Yep.
And then bring that to
We
the
put
goal
all the
setting
Post-its
session.
on the board and we get a Mark 3
Right,
like,
yeah.
and then we.
No, I think just.
Yeah,
if you think
14-hour
of it.
meeting.
Is that?
What? Nothing.
I just wasn't sure if that was something that would be considered an individual item or if that's something that's a larger agenda item, but that's okay.
Okay.
And my other question or my other observation was that this is Assistant Manager Phillips' first meeting for us, isn't it?
Second.
The second one? When did you do the other one?
I did one in
Did I miss it?
2013.
Oh, years ago.
Similarly brief.
Years ago. That was before I was on council. So,
Yeah,
so welcome to.
it's old hat.
He's usually on the other days, I think, so.
It's harder to make comments.
And this is, I'll just close with this, and that is, you all know how much time I spent down at the State House last year, or last legislature. And I am pretty excited that the governor has asked me to help put together a group. We have 2 supervisors, and there's 2 mayors on this group that's going to be meeting with some legislators. Looks like it's going to happen. The first meeting will happen towards the end of this month. The whole idea is to get on a table. What are some big issues that we have that we're concerned about from legislative standpoint, and then also hear from them what they're going to be working on, next year, and to be proactive versus reactive. So we've been trying to get this put together. Kudos to Governor Reynolds. She's very committed to this. It's just schedule is just crazy, and then they had the change in leadership, in the House as well too. So, but it'll be an interesting, meeting. And then I was also honored to be appointed to the. It's a new group. It's an aggregation of other groups down at the State House, but it's with the Justice Advisory Board. I'm the mayoral representative on that, and knowing that justice system is a big, a big concern and issue. it's going to be very interesting to hear and be part and parcel of conversations. We talk about everything from juveniles to, adults as well too. So I may give you some updates as those meetings occur. And last but not least, Mark and I did meet with Supreme Court Justice Mark Cady last week. I'm losing track of time. Last Thursday. And Mark's going to follow up with a memo relative to the security, in the city hall. We had a very good conversation with him, and so he'll follow up with that. But we're going to close that loop from a conversation we had at council a number of months ago. All right, very good. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Let's adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.